Hello, everyone. Welcome to VRIC Media, your most trusted voice in metals and mining. I am your host, Darrell Thomas, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Lobo Tigre, the Independent Speculator. How you doing today, Lobo?
That's me. Happy to be here, Darrell.
Yes. So I know you're not really into the short-term kind of price movements or when the dollar falls against gold and such, but just want to get your take on the overall. Is this correction? Do you think this correction's over? We dropped significantly last month, and then now we've rebounded to about 4,100 and some change, as well as silver had gotten back above $50 and $51 this morning on the futures and spot. And so just want to get your perspective there.
Is it? Time to go all in buy again. I can't say that. It is pretty interesting. I've posted a meme on my Twitter/X account of the beach ball meme, and it keeps going under 4,000 and then it just pops right back up again. The thing is, this, and other people have said this, so I won't wax rhapsodic about it, but we've seen this before at 3,500, at 3,000, 2,000. They seem to be the screaming up and then some consolidation and wiggling around a certain level, and then the next big move was upwards. So if this is the next version of that, that's extremely bullish. It would imply the next big move will be up and not down. And the longer we hold at 4,100, but around 4,000, and it did quite a bit of waffling above and below 3,000 for quite a while. The more I think, every day, every week that goes longer, the more I think the next big move will be higher. Because if the market was done, like, oh, that was it, gold had a great run, but that was it for this cycle, it would peak and it would go down. At least if history is prologue, that has always been the way before. It doesn't plateau for a long time and then just decide to give up someday. Oh, that we're done. Usually these markets end in a blow off top, a peak. And what we're seeing, the longer this goes sideways, the less, by definition, like a peak that looks like. So I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm usually the professional rain on the parade, but I'm actually quite encouraged. This has already been different from 2011 and 1980, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we think about the tailwinds for gold and even like this ending with a blow off top, I mean, obviously every time we've had a blow off top, whether that be from the early 80s, blow off top, what gold was priced at in dollars was more than what it was previously before the run. I think it was, pretty much set at $42, and then it ends up in a couple $300 after the 80s. And then even after 2011, it was higher than what it was previously. And so I'm kind of interested in when we have this blow off top where gold's going to level off at. But just thinking about the current headwinds, tailwinds, I mean, I can't really find a lot of headwinds, which is kind of alarming for me, in a way. But I see a lot of tailwinds because even right now, at the date of this interview, we're still experiencing the government shutdown, and it's like, okay, well, when the government opens back up, is that still going to be bullish for gold? We have the tariff conversation at the Supreme Court, which could be catastrophic if ruled against, if ruled unconstitutional. And so, but I could also see gold and equities rising if there was, a ruling that is unconstitutional. So we know that gold rose with, when that Liberation Day and tariff, the whole trade war thing was escalated, gold started rising. But there's still argument that, okay, gold could still go higher even if those are ruled unconstitutional. And so I'm kind of interested in your perspective on the tailwinds, headwinds kind of topic.
Sure, I agree with you. And maybe that's one reason why I'm a little bit less nervous about saying that it's looking good. Gold holding above 4,000 or around 4,000. That's looking more like a consolidation before a move up than a top, a market top. And all of those things that you're saying are just like that, or support that. But the one thing you didn't include in your list, and think this is, again, it's not original to me. Other people have said this, but it's absolutely vitally important in this space is the central bank gold buying. Now, as a gold bug, I've spent the last 40 years hating central banks. And so it's kind of cognitive dissonance for me to be looking at central banks as a good thing. Mm-hmm. And you know, as an Austrian economics type, I can't say that I love any central banks or I'm in favor of them. But the fact is that central banks are buying. It's really not so much about central banks. It's about foreign sovereigns deciding to mitigate dollar risk in their holdings. And none of the things that you said, if everything changes, let's say the shutdown ends and we get this data dump of all these reports that haven't been issued for all this time, and let's say it goes either way. Let's say the U.S. labor market looks much stronger than anybody thinks right now, or let's say it looks much weaker. Either way, that can change the narrative on Wall Street. There will be panic reactions up or down, different ways depending on how it goes. None of that's going to make any difference to the people in China who have been accumulating gold, or the people in Russia, or and not just BRICS, but anybody else who's said, you know what, we don't want to be the 51st state. Maybe we should hedge our bets, or 52nd, or whatever. Maybe we should hedge our bets and mitigate against having Uncle Sam have so much power over us through the dollar. So I think this is a true paradigm shift. This is a one-way change that doesn't go back. You cannot stuff this genie back in the bottle. And whether the Fed might cut more or less because of the jobs report or all this, none of that matters to that macro thesis. It does matter in the sense of, well, if I buy today and there's a big, shake up tomorrow because of this news and my shares go down or something, and then I panic and I sell or whatever, so it can matter in terms of speculation and timing or entry and exits to the markets. But for the macro thesis about why we own gold in the first place, I really don't see any headwinds. I don't see, well, let me put it this way. Gold is not something, this is again not original me, it's a Doug Casey, but gold is not something I buy because I think it's going higher, or rather because I think the dollar is going lower as a speculation or as an investment. Gold is something I buy because it's gold. I can hold it in my hand and it has value. I can be long and there's no counterparty short, there's no counterparty risk. And in case of emergency, I've got a rainy day fund, or in case of a once in a lifetime opportunity, I've got that resource of last recall. And I have experienced both of those in my lifetime, the emergency and the opportunity type use of savings. So for all of that, none of this discussion about what might happen next, or none of that matters for that. The macro picture, the one-way transition that we've been talking about, that does matter. That's very bullish because it's a long-term thesis for buying and holding bullion. And by the way, it includes silver in that, even though the central banks aren't buying. But in terms of bullion. But as an independent speculator, I'm not speculating on gold and silver bullion. Those are my savings. I'm speculating on the stocks. And for that, it does matter. This data dump that we're looking for, the shutdown is supposedly ending. We should get some jobs numbers, a whole bunch of information that we haven't had for a while. I have a feeling, what does Magic 8 Ball say? Looks like yes. I have a feeling that we're going to see a much weaker jobs market, and that's going to say, Wall Street's going to say more Fed cuts, yay. And gold doesn't pay interest. So that should be, if that's right, depending on how scary it is, it should be bullish for risk assets because the Fed's going to cut. It should be bullish for gold because gold doesn't pay interest. If it's too scary, it might not be good for the equities. But gold is a fear barometer amongst other things, right? So I think it would still be good. Too scary for equities is not too scary for gold. Gold likes that. It's a safe haven asset. Yeah. The surprise here, the pain trade would be suddenly the numbers look much better, and then maybe we don't need to cut rates, and but it'll be interesting to see how that if that happens. You might see Wall Street treat good news as bad news, as it typically does, but that doesn't necessarily mean that gold would go down, because gold looks forward to inflation ahead. And I think there will also be people saying, oh, well, that means inflation's going to go back up, or inflation is still a risk. And that would be good for gold. So even that's not a headwind. I don't know where you want to go from there, but the long story short is the bullion, the reason for owning the metals themselves, that doesn't change with any of the short-term stuff. Near term, I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. So in your history in the market and in this sector, have you seen two like Supreme Court decisions that could impact markets in this way? I mean, because we have the tariff, whether tariffs are unconstitutional or not, but then we have like the Fed independence argument on the line too coming in. I think it comes in January, and there's been, I think, Fed Governor Lisa Cook was telling the Supreme Court, like, this could be very volatile for markets if, Trump is allowed to fire her and such. And so I'm just thinking, like, okay, have we been in a position where the Supreme Court decisions can impact markets in this type of way? I mean, I'm fairly new to this in the last 5 years and just wondering if you've experienced that in your career.
No, not in my career. I can't think of a Supreme Court decision that directly affected investments as such. It changes society and it changes the future direction of things. There's been historically some very big decisions, but I don't know that they had any immediate impact. I mean, civil rights, obviously that changed everything, all kinds of markets and how businesses were done and who customers were and all sorts of things. But did that make a particular stock go up or down the next day? I don't know. I wasn't there, but I'd be surprised. Farther back in history, there were court cases that had to do with the nature of the dollar, convertibility of gold. Could FDR really confiscate all the gold? There were things farther back that were obviously very impactful in defining the nature of our economy in ways. And I can't tell you how stocks did the next day. I think the Fed independence now issue is less likely to have any big, because it's sort of being priced in, and at the end of the day, maybe I'm just too skeptical, but I don't think the Fed was all that independent anyway. It seems like quite the handmaiden of whatever administration is in there, usually. And even though Trump's been beating up on Powell, too late Powell, for not cutting more, they have cut. So it's not like Powell's hiking rates, despite what Trump is saying, right? And the tariffs, as I understand it, the biggest thing is that the tariffs that have been collected that would then have to be repaid, and it would cause a big mess and lots of chaos, and which, by the way, I think would be good for gold. Chaos is good for gold. But then, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert in tariffs, but as I understand it, that just means Trump has to go back to the drawing board and use the more longer drawn out methods of imposing, like instead of IEEPA, 232. And I'm not, like, if he can't use the emergency excuse, fentanyl, therefore tariffs, right? Well, then he can go through the longer process of having, the tariffs imposed via the longer process. And I forget the names of all these things. But there is a plan B here. So I don't think that a Supreme Court setback on that front wouldn't be a game changer. It would be a volatility event. Famous last words, maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's my uneducated view on that.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that.
We've got 3 of the best porphyry copper targets that I've seen in the past 25 years of exploring for porphyries. Vizsla Copper, we're the team that brought you successes including ISO Energy and Vizsla Silver. We've put our foot on 2 outstanding projects in central British Columbia with copper and gold and some molybdenum in there. Our Poplar South project, we're drilling there at the moment, and I think we're on the verge of a major discovery. If you want to learn more, you can find us at vizslacopper.com.
Okay, so just thinking about silver. So I've been diving deeper into the silver supply demand dynamics over the past few years, and I know that you have been quoted to be Darth Silver at times. And so, I want to get your perspective on, like, how critical is the supply demand situation for silver? From my understanding, there isn't enough above ground supply, or it's not all accessible for the growing industrial demand, and then also mine outputs aren't meeting demand either, and then recycling isn't enough to fill that gap. And so I want to get your perspective on the supply demand dynamics in silver.
Yeah, a couple things. The bulls here point out about this, but there is a lot of supply, physical supply, that is not counted as supply. And there's a big argument between what's his name, the other silver guy that people hate even more than me, from CPM Group.
Jeffrey.
Yes, right. And the Silver Institute and so on, and whether you count investment silver as supply. And I have to say that I think Jeff has a point in that at the right price, yeah, people will sell their silver. I mean, it's just not true that all the bullion in the world out there none of it would come to market if there was a bid for it. And we see that, and we're not just talking grandma's teaspoons and stuff. I'm talking coins and bars. I mean, heck, they're bars. Coins are a little bit more painful to sell. Despite my Darth mantle, right? I don't want to sell my silver coins, especially my Canadian wolves. That seems like cannibalism. But a silver bar is just a bar. That's meant to be made into other things. So I do think that there's a lot more silver that could come to market under the right conditions. Hold on to the rotten tomatoes, dear silver bulls. But that's not quick or easy. It implies much higher prices.
Yes.
But then here's the thing. Like, going forward, this whole AI thing and the EV thing, it's bullish for silver in a way because it goes into a lot of things, a lot of electronics. But it also is going to incent a huge increase in the copper mine output. And the copper mines are the number one source of silver in the world. So at some point, the good news is that these big copper mines, they're so big and so expensive that even if you got the permits today, it'd take years before that supply hits the market. And there aren't many that are shovel ready now. So I don't think this is going to be a problem for tomorrow or even in the next couple of years. But there will be a point when, push has come to shove and NIMBY thinking is given way to that. We got to have critical minerals, including copper. And at some point in the future, I do think copper supply will ramp up. Whether it be enough to keep up with the demand for copper, I don't know. But that will produce a huge increase in silver supply. Now, will that outstrip demand? I don't know that anybody knows. I certainly don't have that data. No, I wouldn't believe really anybody who guessed and had a fancy chart saying here's what might happen. It would all be a bunch of hypotheticals. But all I'm saying in answer to the question, I could get my Darth mask out here, is I do think there's a future, because silver is a byproduct. I do see a future in which there is actually a lot more physical supply coming from the mines. And that hasn't been the case recently. So we have an opportunity now. But it might be a reason why high prices eventually cure high prices. But for me as a speculator, my time horizon is a year or two. And so I'm really not worried about this. I'm just answering the question. And right now, we talked about gold consolidating around 4,000. That's great instead of a peak. For silver to be back up over 50 as we speak, last time I looked, it was close to 51. That's completely different from the previous silver peaks up around 50. So I think the setup is very encouraging. So all those rotten tomatoes, if you want to throw them at me, I mean, it's striking, Darrell. I just got a message from some guy because I said something positive about silver. And he's like, oh, have you finally turned bullish? These people just don't listen. Okay, I mean, just because I don't say it doesn't have to go to the moon tomorrow, that doesn't mean I have not been a silver bear probably for 20 years. I should have been in 2011, but I wasn't. I've just been a cautious bull, but somehow cautious bull equals bear in many people. Pardon the rant, but it blew my mind. Like they don't hear what I'm saying. I'm saying, listen to everything I just said talking to Darrell right now. I'm giving you a positive outlook. But if it's not as positive as you want, that doesn't make me a bear. Sorry, carry on, Darrell.
I mean, you just mentioned you have silver coins and such. So yeah, I mean, why would you hold it if you were bearish on it? So just thinking about okay, so we have the copper mines, that obviously take a while to get online, and I do want to dive into your perspective on copper, because recently at the New Orleans Investment Conference, you mentioned copper, and so silver being a byproduct of the mining of gold, nickel, copper, and other metals and such,
Lead and zinc.
lead and zinc, right? And so thinking about that, I'm kind of wondering, I mean, you mentioned like copper, there are not a lot of copper mines online. Many of them aren't shovel ready and such. And even this goes past the permitting process as well. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, right now you have silver mines that are, producing some form of output, right? And so I'm kind of wondering, like, are you bearish there? Like, do you think there's more silver in the ground there for like the actual silver mines? Like when we look at like the list of the top silver producers, and so I'm kind of wondering your outlook on silver.
Well, there's a lot to tease apart there. There is no such thing as a silver mine. I mean, the highest grade silver mines in the world, they're still, basically lead or zinc mines. Usually lead, like it's galena, lead sulfide that comes with super high grade silver. The purest precious metals mines out there are silver gold. But I can't think of a mine anywhere that's just silver and nothing else, like argentite and nothing else. There's always some other metal sulfide there. But anyway, in terms of the big silver mines or the high grade silver mines or the silver mines that can come online, it just so seems to be distributed, and it might actually be not an accident, but due to history and the Spanish conquistadors and their legacy and the sociological legacy of that period of colonization, that many of the best silver districts are in basket case countries or high political risk countries. So, if I wanted to try to if I really was a silver bear and I wanted to say, oh, well, there's all these, big silver deposits that they're going to respond to high prices, that argument would actually run into very sharp, pointy, counter arguments from the political risk in all these places. I mean, Bolivia has a lot of silver, some big silver projects, but that's a minefield. Mexico took a turn for the worse in the previous administration. There's an open question as to the new one. And let me digress a little bit on Mexico because people keep asking about this. Yes, I am aware that a junior miner got a permit for an open pit project in Mexico. That is absolutely encouraging. I am very glad to see this. They said no more open pit mines, and this is an open pit mine. This is material. It is one. It's not very large, and it's in an already disturbed mine site. Like one of the things that they have really dug their heels in is like no new projects, no greenfields. Well, if it's an existing mine or mine site, we'll think about it. So I don't see this as an entirely green light for the whole country. It is very positive if they keep doing this. There were also a bunch of water permits, but a water permit is not a mining permit. But it seems like the bark might be worse than the bite in Mexico. And if that's true, that would be great news for silver bulls because there's a bunch of silver projects in Mexico of interest. Believe it or not, I still own some risk-free. When Mexico took the hard left turn, I went risk-free. But this will be interesting. If you're a silver bull, and you're looking what to buy, I'm not saying rush into Mexico yet. I'm saying Mexico and Mexico plays are on my radar. Because of Mexico's history, you might actually still be able to get a discount compared to some other jurisdictions. And what could be better than something on sale at a discount in a bull market?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I admire your perspective because you're on the ground, you're visiting mines, you're traveling the world, visiting these projects and such. And so, who else would have a better idea. And so
I
yeah,
like to mention that my mother's maiden name is Gonzalez, so I'm related to half of Mexico. I have deep roots there. My network is big.
gotcha. So
Speedy was a cousin on my uncle's left. Never mind.
yeah. So just thinking about let's transition to copper. So you mentioned that copper is your pick for 2026. And so could you outline some of that thesis for us?
Sure. Well, first off, copper was also my pick for 2025, and gold and silver have outperformed copper, platinum, palladium as well. And a lot of people say, "Oh, gee, Lobo, you really got that wrong." Sure. If the question is which metal will go up the most in the year, yeah, I got that wrong. But when I say top pick, I don't say necessarily the one that will be the biggest hockey stick. It's a combination of outlook for upside and confidence in the thesis. In hindsight, we could say, well, gee, everything was, but I don't know that anybody knew that 2025 would work out the way it did. In hindsight, people would say, oh, I predicted this, but, that doesn't mean they really knew. It means they got lucky. But anyway, I was wrong for 2025, we could say. Though 25% increase for copper year to date is not bad. It did well. And actually, I did buy one copper stock, and it's doing well. So I haven't lost money here. Anyway, but the thesis is actually the same as it was before. Copper has been okay this year and done, relative slouch at 25% increase. But that's not based on any of the reasons, which were continued inflation, never mind the AI and the EVs and all that, but just the general progress, advancement, industrialization, the quarter of the world that's looking to raise its standard of living that requires a lot more copper. Population growth might be cooling in China and places, but overall the world is still growing, and Dr. Copper is essential. It's not an optional metal. It's like steel. Like you have to have it. So the general outlook was positive anyway, but also more specifically, the impetus was, I think all roads lead to inflation. I think the Trump agenda is inflationary. Doge didn't cut all that much. Europe's rearmament is inflationary. Russia's war is inflationary. Even China has finally reported. I'm remembering, poor Mario Draghi desperately trying, we'll get inflation somehow, someday. The Chinese have now finally reported they've beaten deflation and they've got consumer price increases. Oh joy, our prices are going up. However will we get on? Anyway, so this is bullish for anything real, actually, not just copper, anything real. But the reason specifically why I like copper so much is that it should do well in this environment, and it's supply constrained. What we were talking about before, there are very few projects that are ready for shovels to hit the ground. Some of them have feasibility studies where they could be, but the permitting has taken so long. If you've got a feasibility study that's pre-COVID, you might as well just throw it away. The price environment is completely different. Even a study that's 2 years old should be redone before you actually make an investment decision. Just because the world is changing, input costs are changing, and it's great. We look at, our prices went up, copper's up, gold's up, silver's up, woohoo! Those mines will make all this money. Yeah, but your input costs can go up. The one saving grace right now is that oil is not up. And these are energy intensive businesses. So broadly speaking, I do see a window of opportunity. I do see improved economics on that basis for many projects. But I don't think that lasts. Eventually input costs catch up. Even oil at some point. So the thesis, why I was bullish on copper in 2025, it's still on the table, but we're going into it from a higher starting point. So that's pretty optimistic.
Gotcha. Okay, so with the recent release of the critical minerals list, we had copper, silver, uranium on there, as well as many of the rare earths and such. I'm kind of wondering if you have any thoughts on that list being released. I mean, obviously, we knew that they were critical minerals, but do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, I won't say it doesn't matter, but yes, I mean, we knew they were critical anyway. I mean, copper was already the subject of Trump tariffs and adjustments, and um, yeah, ultimately I'm on the side of it doesn't really make that much difference. But to the degree that you've got an investment committee from a major banking firm or a fund or something like that, and if you've got a mandate, let's say you have a green mandate, and now you need these critical minerals for that green agenda, it might bring more investors to the table. I think that matters even more in Europe with their green lexicon and all that stuff. It has made uranium investable in Europe where it wasn't before. So I think, when I say marginal, I don't mean to diminish it as unimportant, but at the margins where prices are determined, yes, it does matter. But I don't see it really as a game changer because, whether they were called that or not, as you framed it well in your question, we all knew they were critical anyway.
Okay, so just thinking about the one aspect that I've been thinking about with the list is that, this is the first time in my investing journey that a president has brought this to the forefront. We know that this has happened historically where certain administrations will invest in, will really support mining and infrastructure building and things of that nature. And we know that under the Biden administration, there was a lot of focus on the clean energy initiatives and ESG and all of that, right? Lithium skyrocketed and then came back down. It was like Humpty Dumpty that sat on the wall, right? It was pretty bad. So, thinking about the Trump administration and the support for these critical minerals and such, do you think that could be more of a game changer in terms of like we actually got an administration that's supportive of it?
Yes, in several ways. And let me, there are a lot of things that Trump did. Trump 1.0 did that Biden immediately reversed. Like that's the problem with doing things by executive order is the next executive can order the reverse. And there was a lot that Trump did the first time around that was immediately reversed. So it's reasonable for people to say, oh yeah, well, this seems fine for X, Y, or Z, but it can just be reversed. But in this particular issue, these minerals are necessary for the green agenda. So I really don't see that. I can see the next administration coming in and reversing the end of USAID aid and transgender training for Ethiopians or whatever weird stuff that, Trump got rid of. I can see somebody else putting all that back. But if they want windmills and solar panels, they can't undo the critical mineral stuff. They're just, you can't have it. You can't recycle more windmills into existence. I'm actually less worried about this. But even if I was worried, Trump's got 3 more years. So if you do have something that's shovel ready in the US or just waiting on the permits, right? I think that is material. It's investable. That matters. And it is something that I look at in my due diligence as I'm looking at things. So, that doesn't help me if I've got a project in, I don't know, Suriname or something, But it does matter as an investment criteria for U.S. plays and maybe U.S. close allies plays. I think it matters in Europe too. There are things that are permittable now in Europe that weren't before. And I mean on not just European companies, I mean in Europe, projects in Europe. Though interestingly, it seems like maybe there's a little bit of racism, I don't know, but it seems like Europe sees Eastern Europe as like the better place for all that dirty mining stuff to happen. We don't want any mining in France, but Serbia, sure, why not?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought there. For sure, I could see something like that. But it's that not in my backyard type argument, right? And
I mean, it used to be, and you would know this. It used to be, oh, we're going to do our mining over there where those brown people live on some other continent, right?
Yep, exactly.
But now, that doesn't fly, and you're at risk. If the Chinese swoop in and sew up offtake deals with most of Africa, then what do? Well, okay, maybe not my backyard, but my neighbor's backyard. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, but the point is, this is an important issue. I think this does change the investment outlook. And I said, I don't make predictions, but I said years ago that I thought that when push came to shove, the NIMBY thinking would have to give way to just reality. I mean, you can't have your windmills and solar farms and stuff without mining. You don't grow copper on trees. You mine it out of the ground. So, the inevitable wasn't imminent for a very long time, but it was inevitable, and now we're there. This is really happening, and I do think it's investable. It doesn't mean you can rush out and buy everything. You still have to look at the specific company. Where's the project? What's the political environment? What are the risks? And what are and one other thing is that this doesn't make all pigs fly, right? Or if the project sucks, that's a technical term. A critical minerals designation or a friendlier government isn't going to make it not suck. It still sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, couple things on that. I'm curious in your thoughts on the rare earth investment theme. Is that over? I mean, it looks over on the charts, right? Many of these companies, I think MP Materials even came out and said, to investors to be careful or something like that. But there was a lot of speculation there. And obviously, I mean, the agreement between Trump and Xi Jinping is, I think, for a year or whatnot. And so that can obviously change at any moment. So I just kind of wonder is that over, or is that just getting started?
Yes and no. So I have said for years, actually, and including recently during this whole tariff excitement, and I have said that there's money to be made in rare earths. Clearly, somebody has to mine this stuff. The fact that the West has woken up to its dependence on China, which is unacceptable, and that there's now industrial policy, not just in the U.S., but in multiple countries, to secure alternative sources, diversify their supply chains. That's very real. And that doesn't go away just because Trump and Xi make a deal. But, clearly, when there's a scare and the prices go like this, and then there's good news and the prices roll over, like that's predictable. I mean, it's not predictable. It's no surprise when something like that happens. So the point here is, and I'll tell you, like, I have made no money on rare earths. I did not buy any rare earths companies. Any of my clients who followed my lead completely missed out on the big moves up in some of these rare earths companies. I will say that's true. I didn't short anything, but I was short in the sense that I let that ship sail without me. And you know what? I feel no FOMO, no regret, because you wake up one day and there's a headline about Trump and Xi making a deal and prices roll over. You never know. The scarcity is not based on physical supply constraint. It's based on politics, and politics changes, as you just framed it in your question, and it can send prices north in a day, and it can take it away the next. So that's just not an area I feel comfortable speculating. The storium around all these minerals is good, and I think over the longer term, there will be companies that bring these minerals to market. But you know what? That doesn't mean that the shareholders will be getting big fat, dividend checks or drips or whatever in the future. I mean, look at it. The United States government is moving ahead supporting lithium mining in the United States. Not while prices are high, but while prices are low. How is that going to help lithium prices go up? And okay, maybe they say, okay, well, we'll guarantee you a price floor. Well, okay, you guarantee a price floor. And if you can make money at that price, well, that's guaranteed profit. But it's also guaranteed that your profit ain't going up, right? It's an artificial price, and you aren't going to get any more benefit than that. So let me be clear about this. I'm not saying that buying the right rare earth or critical mineral, besides copper, like the oddball critical minerals. I'm not saying that jumping on these at the right time can't make money. If you get on right before some scary news sends them screaming north, you can make a bunch of money. But you must understand that when you do that you do not know when that roller coaster is going to roll over and go down the other way. And so you need to be nimble. You need to be willing to take profits. This is not a buy and hold forever kind of thing. And frankly, since it's so difficult to say when these markets might turn, Like you might have thought, as important as lithium is, isn't it interesting how long lithium has been crawling along the floor here and just cannot get up? So, low prices don't necessarily cure low prices. And actually, the critical minerals argument is bearish for these prices. If countries are going to motivate companies to produce more of something that's already crawling along the bottom, how is that price going to go up? So my view is this is a minefield. Enter at your own risk. If you make a bunch of money, congratulations. I've got no problem with that. I'm not going there, personally.
Did you ever play that game Minesweeper? I could never figure that game out when I was a kid. Where anywhere you click, it could be a mine and game over. So it's kind of like that. So just thinking about the other metals or commodities that are not getting a lot of love right now. You mentioned lithium. Rick Rule has talked about oil and gas. I was kind of wondering if you have any other commodities on your watch list that are not getting a lot of love, where that could be upside opportunity.
Yeah, primarily oil, but unlike Rick, I'm not quite ready to buy yet. And Rick has said that it might go lower from here. And with OPEC clearly trying to go for reestablish market dominance rather than price support, who knows where the bottom is here. So, and Rick has said, I don't care. I will eventually be right. And he has only one client, Rick Rule. He likes to joke. And Rick Rule is very patient with Rick Rule. I don't have one client. And many of them are much more in the "what have you done for me lately" camp. And if I say, buy oil, best in the space, and just put it in a drawer and forget about it, you'll be happy in 5 years. If 6 months from now that stock is off 50%, they will not be happy. If a year from now it's still suffering, they will be very unhappy. And a lot of people will sell. They will give up. They will not wait the 5 years or whatever it takes. Like Rick will wait whatever it takes. I have seen him over my career. I've seen him wait years and years. Even replace management teams. I call him the Terminator. He will not take no for an answer. And eventually he makes that darn thing produce a yield or a gain in the end. But most people don't have that power. And so I think there is a risk to, trying to catch a falling knife. But in terms of other minerals, we haven't talked about uranium. I still love uranium. It's not really hated anymore. It's got the green mantle as well. But it is subject to volatility. So I'm looking for the next volatile episode in uranium. In terms of hated things, really oil is the only one. Like lithium is getting kind of hated, nickel too, but I don't see them turning around soon. I think oil is probably the one most likely to do that. Maybe when, I'm not sure, maybe if the end of the war in Ukraine makes Trump decide that, okay, it's time to let the market rebalance. We don't need to punish Putin with low oil prices anymore. Maybe that would have a difference. But I don't know. I'm not going to pull out the magic 8 ball again. I'm looking for, I know I don't know where the bottom's going to be. I know I can't time this market. But when it looks like it's recovering, I think there'll be a long way upward to go. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for evidence that we've carved out a bottom and that we're recovering. And I just don't see that yet.
Do you follow much of the oil to gold ratio? Do you factor that into your perspective or no?
No, I understand it. And I guess neither oil nor gold is going away. But the fundamentals for the markets can change. Like there's also the copper to gold ratio. And if the use cases change, then it makes sense for the ratio to change. And in a world where, and this is a Doomberg thing, where you really can't just look at oil. You have to look at oil equivalent. And there's a lot more hydrocarbons that are useful as oil equivalent. And the more LNG plants are built, and the more so this will be. So we may be in a world where it's, the definitions of the inputs for these ratios changes. and therefore they may never go back to a historical, norm. And this is where I get hate on the silver front. That may be the case with silver and gold too. I'm not a bear. I'm not bearish on silver, but I think it is a mistake to assume that the gold-silver ratio has to return to its historical average. It doesn't have to if the use cases have changed.
Gotcha. Okay, so as we wrap up, I'd love to give you a plug. Well, I guess you and VRIC a plug with your course at Commodity University, where you take the audience through Mining 101. And so just wanted to, if you have a high level overview of the things that you cover, which I started your class and I'm learning some things, but it is I like your effort in trying to break it down for the average person to understand how these sectors work and how mining works and such. And so if you have anything
that's why
you want
Jay
to add.
asked me to do it, Darrell, is because I'm not a geologist. And that might sound like a bad thing. Well, why is a non-geologist talking about mining and engineering and geology? Well, when you get an engineer in there, no offense to my engineer friends, or you get a geological scientist in there, it's very hard for them to not be technical. Especially you put them on camera, they want to be right? They want to say things correctly. And I'm just an evil scum of the earth newsletter writer, so it's easy for me to, I make my living communicating with ordinary people, the average investor out there. So that's why Jay asked me to do it, to be that. Actually, now that I think about it, this is the thing for which Doug Casey hired me all those years ago. When I first started in this business, I didn't know anything about geology or investing. I'd never bought a stock in my life. I was a writer, and Doug and David hired me to work with Rick and Brent and the geologists and other people, professionals and smart people, and edit their writing to communicate to our audience. That's what I was originally hired for. I was hired as an editor. So maybe Jay figured out how to use my talents in a similar way.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting thinking about how many of the companies that are publicly traded, they want to reach newer investors, they want to reach fresh capital, and they want more shareholders and such. But sometimes the communication can go just way over the head, and so it's kind of, those two just seem kind of incompatible at times. So you do have to have someone that can break it down for the average folks that are interested. And so, Lobo, appreciate you. You all be sure to check out the Commodity University and check out Lobo's course, Mining 101. He goes into the details there. And then Independent Speculator, what's happening there on that front?
Well, we're having a great year. And I hope our audience is too. Let me go sideways with this. We have the free weekly digest, which I encourage everybody to sign up for. We won't spam you. But the one thing I would, if you hated everything I said about silver or copper or whatever you disagreed with me about, at least give me credit for being honest with you instead of trying to blow sunshine your way and tell you what you want to hear. At least I'm telling you what I think. And I bring this up because we have a service called My Take, which isn't really a newsletter. It's a database of company evaluations. It's sort of like VRIC, where you send in your stocks and he evaluates them for you, except this is a database and it's constantly updated. And you can love me or hate me, but as long as you don't think I'm a liar, then this is very useful, because what I'm telling you is that these are independent evaluations. No company can pay me any amount of money for me to give them, a thumbs up or a claws up, as the case may be, when they deserve a thumbs down. So if you think you know what you're doing, you know your stuff, but could use some little extra help with your due diligence, pardon the sales pitch, Darrell, but people just don't understand My Take. It's very curious to me. I think I have more subscribers to my higher end service than I do to my introductory service, My Take, because people just don't understand what it is. But that's what it is. It's a due diligence tool, and maybe check it out.
Yes, you all be sure to go check that out on independentspeculator.com. I mean, I'm probably going to go over there and check it out myself. I've been kind of I know your service is a little bit different, but lately I've been fearful to send my portfolio to Rick. I'm like, I don't know if I want, which
Well,
I think some people, they get married to the company
oh, they
and
get mad. Oh yeah, people get mad. But you know what? But there again, if you get mad at me because I pointed out the flaws with your favorite stock, at least give me credit for being honest with you. Like that.
yeah,
That's the point. You don't have to. You don't have to agree with me. You say, "Ah, you're full of it. You're wrong. You got this was wrong." Fine. At least I wasn't, bullshitting you.
yeah,
So I think there's value in that. I think it's like a second opinion, right? You've got your opinion. I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm just telling you my opinion, and you can include that in your own due diligence process.
yeah, agreed. Well, you all got the information. Thank you, Lobo, for coming on the show. Look forward to having you back. And if you all have not subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe. We'd love to have your support and everything. And so until next time, Lobo.
Thank you, Darrell.